And so when I see single dads, divorced dads, widowed dads with their children, I see so many people of such great concern as if they can't handle it. And I will often go up and just talk with them like a normal person. And we will often be really easygoing, capable dads who just happen to be the one in charge. But it's really hard because when we think about how to form community around this, we're tied into who we work with, who our kids play with, where they go to school. So it is harder to find until you do the thing that I preach in my book and I say in every event, which is it takes nothing to be vulnerable if you know that that can be a strength. And for many men, it's hard to admit what you don't know as a parent because there's such judgment compared to moms who oftentimes also don't know, but we just assume do.
Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. We're focused on lead dads, working moms, and how small changes at home or work can have a big impact on their lives. Each episode promises to deliver actionable advice on some area of concern at home or at work. Short, direct, again, actionable. 5 questions, 5 answers. Now, if there's anything that parents worry about, it's community. Having it at home, having it at work, knowing who in their community or their network that they can actually rely on. If there's one thing we hate, or I'll speak for myself, it's being ghosted. And so I'm super excited today to have as our guest David Homan, who's become a friend of mine over the past couple of years. And he is the anti-ghoster. I don't think he could ghost somebody if he had to. And we're here to talk because he just has a new book out called, here it is, see it right there, called Orchestrating Connection, How to Build Purposeful Community in a Tribal World. And I've been a member, 2-3 years now. I remember clear as day when somebody first told me about David and asked me if I wanted to get involved. I remember my first call with David, and as a lead dad who lives out in the Connecticut suburbs, I pretty much remember every event I've gone to in New York because it's a heavy lift, a big ask for me to get in the city late at night, and they have all been worthwhile. And this book distills, best-selling book, distills a lot of the wisdom that I've gleaned and more from his event. So David Homan, welcome to the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you, Paul. I am so honored to be here.
Question 1 is about some of these community rules. And as I said, I remember this clear as day. A guy named Michael Lear, he and I were playing golf, and I knew him through my previous life at the New York Times. And he was saying, I've got this guy that I want you to meet. And I said, great. And he said, but, he's got rules. And I said, what are you talking about, Mike? Like, I got 3 kids. I know a thing or two about rules. But the rule that always, trips people up, and I love this rule. You have 2 rules, but I'll talk about the first one first. And so the first question is, why did you build a community with the rule that you only want people in that community that you would leave your kids with?
I wanted that rule. And when I started it, to be clear, I had 1 child, so it's become the plural. Since my second one, Max, was born, it'd be horrible if it just stayed as like leave my kid with, and I pretend the other one doesn't matter as much, and they both do, as my dad would always say. Every kid I have is my favorite.
Yeah.
I wanted no nebulousness. Like when that mutual friend Michael, who I just saw the other week, he understands, but he doesn't necessarily convey to you, Paul, that his reputation in my community and his ability to maintain his quote membership, which there's no paid membership, it's just the choice to stay in it, is contingent on only introducing me to extraordinarily high integrity givers.
Mm.
So, there's many people you could lend your car to at 4 a.m. if they needed to go help their mother. You could cook dinner with, you could be stuck in an elevator with. Like, in multiple cultures, we have so many different ideas of what trust is. But as a parent, true trust is in a pinch, something has to happen. You're not just near your neighbor that you've done this with before. Who would you call and who would drop everything to help you with no questions asked, no timeline asked? And my test a decade ago was, what happens if you build an entire community where the membership and the engagement is based on understanding that risk from the very beginning
Mhm.
and reacts that way, then everyone gets it when every single conversation in that room has purpose and intent because you know the filter to be there.
I love this rule, and I think it's so fascinating because it's not like you have these events with a bunch of goody two shoes. You have these events with a bunch of really interesting people with interesting lives, and they have that high integrity. And I think of one guy who lives down the street from me. My wife and I would both call him in a second to take care of our kids, and he served 10 months in federal prison for financial crimes. And so, like, I wouldn't necessarily give him my money to invest with him, but I think of him as the most loving, caring guy. And it sounds so strange to say somebody who's a convicted felon has high integrity, but he has high integrity, and it makes me at least think in a different way. Where there are plenty of people who I think are perfectly nice, and as you said, I lend my car to, but I don't necessarily know I would say, hey, can you take care of my kids? And the second part of that question is when you think of that, because what standard does that set? And do you ever have people who say, I don't know if this is for me, or what do you mean exactly by leave your kids with me? Does that prompt questions or pushback from people?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have people admit they weren't great parents, and now that they're empty nesters, they're wishing they did it differently. I got other
Yeah.
people, sometimes they call themselves the childless, or what would they call me now, like crazy cat ladies. And they're nervous because they've never taken care of a child. But
Mm,
it's not about whether you would just be a great parent. It's how many people make that cut in your life,
yeah.
because that neighbor that you mentioned down the street, like, yeah, might have made a mistake in the past, but how do you show up now? How do you show up for people? And how accountable are you to do what you say you're going to do? And I always try to qualify this is not about having everyone be the best angel or, as you said, like goody two shoes on the planet. I want people to treat relationships this way because
Hmm.
most people
Right.
don't. And since I had kids, my entire perspective on what trust is changed because I had so many people who looked great on paper who failed.
Hmm.
They failed to follow up. They actually went out to get me under very subtle pretenses. But if you are stepping up to that ethos, that idea that you were in this community because how you act in it is to a higher standard, what I found now running a decade old purposeful intentional community, everyone adheres to that standard because they choose to.
Hmm.
They may not be that perfect person in other walks of their life, but they will 100% be so in an orchestrated event around other orchestrated members, or certainly when I or you or anyone else who's part of this community asks something that they offer and say they'll do, you do it.
And
And
that,
that's what you expect of somebody parenting your kids.
yeah.
Will you watch my kids for 3 hours? It's not 2 hours, then you got busy. It's not I dropped them off early, they'll be fine waiting at the stoop or the it's like no, like you say you would do it and you did it and the kids were better for it.
Because the second part of, if I remember correctly, of the sort of the two questions, the second question is really, or second requirement, I guess I should say, is that you follow up with people within a certain number of days, correct? It's not like if somebody asks you for something, even if you can't deliver that thing, you don't ghost them, you don't leave them hanging. And is that, am I remembering correctly that that
Yeah,
was sort of the,
so
yeah.
there's a larger guideline which is in the book called my mantra.
Hmm.
But the one you're pointing out is the one people sort of cringe at the most because there's seven different rules within that etiquette. But being responsive within a certain time being responsive within a certain timeline
Yeah.
makes people cringe because maybe they can't adhere to it. And
Mm,
my point is, if somebody calls you up, they ask you for a favor and you do it
right.
for them, are you really so busy you can't get back to that person, especially if it's an introduction and follow up with in a few days? I'm about to do this. I'm about to go on a road trip to New Hampshire with my family. My auto reply says I'm really busy and I'm going to be hopefully eating ice cream and like going into lakes and all the rest and barbecuing a night of everything that's long. So eggplant, hot dogs, sausage, long beans, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
corn as well. But if you were going to do a favor for me and you sent it on Friday, I'm going to be sure I get back to that person and say, here's what I'm doing. Any other ideas of what to grill that's long? I'll really get back to you when my kids start middle school on September 3rd and 4th. But it doesn't take that much to be responsive,
Yep.
but it takes so much away that you can never get back if you ghost somebody or don't make them feel like a priority, especially when you need something from them. Why set up a situation where people are questioning your respect of the situation from the beginning based on responding, too late? Because I will be very sure they responded to somebody else quicker.
Right. I love it. Question two. We know, of the third of fathers in America who are lead dads. We know a big part of the 18% of fathers in America are divorced, widowed, or otherwise single. You're a divorced father of two. You have another daughter through your partner that you're very involved with. What do you think of, a purposeful community and where you get support, and this is absolutely not a plug for the company dads, but when you think of a personal community and where you get support, do you have one as a father, and how have you found those men in your neighborhood, in your city, in your line of work, who you can reach out to directly?
No, I'd say, thinking back to when my kids were a lot younger, I mean, they're still young, 8 and 11, but it's not like I'm pushing them around in a stroller and that little skateboard scooter on the back of it that somehow you can't walk as you push. So then you get like, mom arms are from holding the kids all the time.
Right.
Dad arms are from one armed pushing two children when you have two or more on
Yeah.
some sort of stroller. The thing is, you don't really meet those people in the context of school
Mm-hmm.
unless you're vulnerable and curious. But oftentimes, if you're a lead dad, you just don't meet them
Yeah.
because there's fewer of us showing up for pickup, doing drop off, traveling alone with their kids. And so when I see single dads, divorced dads, widowed dads with their children, I see so many people of such great concern as if they can't handle it.
Mm.
And I will often go up and just talk with them like a normal person. And we will often be really easygoing, capable dads who just happen to be the one in charge. But it's really hard because when we think about how to form community around this, we're tied into who we work with, who our kids play with, where they go to school. So it is harder to find until you do the thing that I preach in my book and I say in every event, which is it takes nothing to be vulnerable if you know that that can be a strength. And for many men, it's hard to admit what you don't know as a parent because there's such judgment compared to moms who oftentimes also don't know, but we just assume do because of those stereotypes. How you build vulnerability to become a confident parent is always the goal. And I remember even as I was, in couples therapy, and then afterwards, talking with other parents about being a divorced dad, no one ever thought I wasn't confident in how I could parent my kids. And the more we can gain confidence through each other, we build that real company of dads in every community we're in.
We were talking before we started recording about when we first talked years ago about a mutual friend of ours, Najee Good, who played in the NFL for a decade. And Najee was the second podcast I ever did. The first was a professor. Najee was the second. And I got to know Najee because we spent a lot of time outside of Jacksonville, Florida. That was his last team. He's there. And he's got two young daughters. And he is lead dad, but almost to point, solo parent. He pretty much is there, all the time with his girls. And when we met, we connected immediately. And what people don't know is I know nothing about football. Like I was never going to pester him and say, remember when you did this play or that play? Because I didn't know. But I just connected with him and I liked him so much as a man and as a father. And when he came on the podcast, it was wonderful because, the NFL is the thing that everybody in America watches. It's, 95 of the top 100 shows are NFL games. And having that connection with him as a man who was divorced, who was vulnerable, who was doing his best with his daughter, but was also this sort of archetype of hyper masculinity. There's nothing more masculine in America than a a guy who plays in the NFL for 10 years and wins a Super Bowl sacking Tom Brady. I mean, that's the pinnacle. But like you said, I think the most important thing, and you do so well at connecting people, across the board through all kinds of, walks of life. But the most important thing is that vulnerability. And when you think about it, and what you talk about in the book, how can you encourage people, and fathers in particular, that vulnerability is a strength, that it's not a weakness, that putting yourself out there can actually help them going forward.
No, I'll just echo what you said about Najee because I love him. I have such respect for how he's led his life, what has changed in it, and what he does now with a close mutual friend, Jonathan, and his company. Because Najee was one of those guys that just like walked into the boardroom at the Eagles when he was playing there and said, "I'd like to learn the business of football." I remember him telling the story about how the owners of the team were like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he didn't realize he was the first player to ever walk into their room and not just want to play, but want to understand how football works.
Mm-hmm.
So he's always had that curiosity. And that's the thing, right? This isn't just as a dad about like saying, I'm not really sure how to manage bedtime. My kids no longer want me to read to them, but then they sneak their phone into their book. Or like there's always examples of what happens. To become a confident parent is to understand how you process this, how you react, and to know you're not alone in this. And the only way to know you're not alone, because we all have doubts, no matter how masculine we might pretend to be. I mean, not me, but other people maybe who really play sports for the rest. It always comes down to if you're confident in yourself and confident and purposeful that you really want to be the best dad you can, then what do you have to lose asking with curiosity how other people manage something you're not sure how to manage? What
Mm.
if that gave you confidence by hearing from others they're also struggling? Because when in the end of this, right, when we grow up, we see our parents, whatever the familiar situation, we see them as these amazing sort of gods that know everything and do everything. And we're lucky to have competent parents. And if we don't, we grow up swearing we will never be like them. Then the minute we have children, we either become them purposefully or accidentally. And we fight against all those same instincts, not realizing our parents were questioning what they did every moment they made that choice, but they never told us. And now we do the same. So I bring that up, Paul, because what harm is it to go to some other dad and to say, here's what I'm struggling with. How have you managed it? And if that dad in any way can say back to you, here's what I've done, or I can't help you, it sucks for me too.
Right.
You're no longer talking in some banal pedestrian way about being a parent. You're talking about the responsibility you took on, how much it means to you, and how much better you want to be at it, because there's no such thing as perfection when you're a parent.
I love that because I often think, like, in saying I don't know or I'm not quite sure, that's actually helpful to the guy asking the question, because then he realizes, okay, I'm not alone. That's a tough question. I don't know the answer to that one either. That dovetails question three. And, what a fun fact about you. Your dad was a professor. You grew up in a university town. I'm thinking of this as you told me where you're headed for this weekend. That university town happened to be Gainesville, Florida, home of the University of Florida, where it's probably, we're talking the end of summer, probably about 98 or 100 degrees right now. You're going up to New Hampshire, where the water in the lake will be about 60 degrees. But when you think back, not just growing up as a son of a professor, growing up in a university town, but when you think about the examples your dad set for you that are the ones that you really remember and you've wanted to, recreate for your own kids and share with other dads. What are some of those examples?
More than anything, right? Because I didn't understand how lucky I was
Mm.
until I got out of high school into college and then like, my more immature years of my 20s into 30s in New York. And I was always mature, just sounded good to say immature, because I had this example from my father of somebody who was always a child, yet always responsible.
Mm.
And more than that, I didn't understand like my parents, both of them are fun. Like all my friends want to play board games with them and see them. People will drop by my hometown I went to college with to have dinner with them when I am not there. And more than that, because this is really about my dad, like my dad showed up when no other dad showed up. elementary school, he would wait outside instead of just dropping me off and tell the entire class a story.
Mm.
He would show up for lunch, which meant in elementary school you were cool and you could pick four other kids and go eat outside, and he could bring you food because, as you know, school cafeterias in the 80s, I don't think they've gotten better. But they were definitely not that great then. And I never understood, because I was so lucky to have him there, that he was the only one, especially of the dads.
Mhm.
And my entire life, I've lived in the shadow of a man who I knew would always be there for me and always showed up, even as we worked through a lot of our, he was a really great dad till I was 11. Then I was 15. He was still acting like I was 11, 25, acting like I was 11. We reached this really amazing flow now as we've both matured in his career, now just retired, and mine in the peak of it. And I show up for my kids no matter how tired I am from launching a book, building a startup, running a global network, traveling, because I'm not going to be the dad that didn't show up or have my kids think it was so great that, my dad came today, this month.
Mhm.
And so more than anything, it's that. And I know it's hard with work, but I will tell you now, and this is, 11 years in to being unapologetically a parent first. I will say to people, I can't meet you Tuesday. I have to go watch my kids' school play rehearsal. And they go, why? I was like, because during the show, and they don't mic them, and I can't really hear what they're saying, but during the rehearsal, I can peek in and I can hear it. And I will have alpha males, not alpha dads,
Yeah.
first be upset that I chose not to take a call with them or a meeting with them. And as they understand, as they get to know me unapologetically, my children first, they'll say to me, hey, I can't meet this week. Taking my kid to the soccer tournament.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
in,
You
we'll
set
be
the
in
example.
Ohio. And it's like,
Yep.
but again, how hard is it to say to anyone else that could be judging you, this is my priority, why isn't it yours? And that's the example my dad set for me.
I mean, it's very hard. And this is what we talk about the company of dads about, being open and honest with your work calendar, putting actual things down there, not but putting what you're doing. And we found that those guys who are vulnerable, who take the risk and do that, it always has a positive ripple effect. And that positive ripple effect is other parents in the organization realize, okay, I guess I can do that too. Or I guess I don't have to try to multitask and be on a call while I'm watching my kids, play rehearsal. So I think it's so important, David, and kind of ties into question 4. You're a busy guy, and you've always been a busy guy. You've always traveled, and it seems like you're getting even busier. And a lot of men who are what we call event dads, not lead dads, those event dads will sort of throw themselves into work and say that I'm a provider, and the word provider means I must earn money, and to earn money, I must be at work as long as I can. I must travel. You found a great way to work smartly, efficiently, yet still travel. Your book's a bestseller. Still, get out and have orchestrated connecting events in person in different cities around the country. I think you went to London last year. That's huge. What are the tips from what you've been doing? What are the tips from what you've been doing that you would share with other dads who want to be lead dads, who have super busy careers, but want to carve out that time to to be there for that play rehearsal?
So I'll tell you the first thing, which is the scary thing one of my friends taught me before I had kids. And like she leans close and she goes, they're watching you, even when you don't think you're parenting. And I took that to heart, because as great as I can show up when I travel with my kids, Paul, if I'm nervous, I'm going to miss a flight and I'm mouthing under my breath, or I'm upset at somebody like American Airlines for delaying my flight 14 hours with children and booking me through Albuquerque to go to Atlanta. Like, oh, my kids are studying me. So your kid or kids are studying you. So, do you want to set that example for them of the provider never being available to be a parent? That work-life balance is always imbalanced towards work? That missing 8 of the 10 soccer games is acceptable for the 10-game season? Because that's the example you're setting. And then you know what? Children follow suit. And then that's the example they set
Mm-hmm.
next. So when I say be unapologetic about it, be unapologetic about it. Make choices. Understand that while you're going to be an active dad, there's no such thing as finding balance. But more than anything, right? Like My kids know what being a connector is, what being an author is, what building a startup is. They ask me what happens at my events and who I helped. I've brought them into my life as opposed to saying, here's my work, I'm doing my work. Now what are we doing in the park? And I've been vulnerable with them about how hard it is, how
Mhm.
challenging it is. You spend 2 years working on a book and get it out there. And the day that I got the USA Today note from my publisher that it became a bestseller, like I was in tears that night, tears of joy to be clear, but my kids were with me for that moment. I didn't celebrate it either out with people who were part of the book, they were part of it with me.
Yeah.
So number one advice, besides, they're always watching you, if your kids are a part of that, it's really going to be hard to not find balance with them because they're going to talk back. They're going to ask what they can join. They're going to question whether you need to do everything. And you might be able to say to somebody you work with or an executive coach, yeah, it's necessary. I need to be on the road 10 weeks this fall. But that doesn't fly when you're saying it to your real bosses, which are your children because they're gonna, my daughter's like, well, I know you go to Austin and Dallas and you do it really quick. Like, is that healthy for you? And I go, no, honestly, it's really hard to fly into Austin, do an event, drive to Dallas, do an event, fly home, but I'm not gonna miss the soccer game. And then they say, well, I'm really glad you came back. It means a lot for Max to see you at the game. The stress goes away.
Yeah.
The balance is back to the balance that should be there, which is if you choose to have children, you need to make a choice to make them the priority, no matter what the circumstances.
So good, David. Fifth and final question, and I think about, and you're a very purposeful guy, so I'm confident this is no coincidence. But all your events I've been to, they're all diverse, gender wise, interesting people. I never walk into an event and say, "Oh, everyone is just like me." I say everybody is interesting and different, and it pushes all of us out of our comfort zone, and I think that's a real credit to what you are creating, and it's remarkable. But when you think about gender equality and gender equity, particularly as it comes to parenting, sure, there's plenty of stuff where dads don't step up, but there's also research on maternal gatekeeping where they're not quite allowed into certain spaces. When you think about how a lead dad, an active dad, a super involved father, how he can start to bring about change in the way he connects as a father in his community and the way he leads others as a father in his company. What are some of the suggestions that come to mind?
So every circumstance is going to be different. So let me just break this down into a few parts of my experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a business owner. I set the tone before running my own businesses. I ran two other businesses. One was a film company, one was a philanthropy. And I set a tone that family and health come first for everyone who works with me and for everyone for whom I work, even at a board level or an investor level.
Mm-hmm.
And again, unapologetic about that. So anyone who has that power to set that tone, if you're not doing it, you're making a choice to say imbalance is okay. Prioritizing work above family is okay. And that was your choice, but then it's your fault for everyone else having that imbalance or feeling like they can't take their kid to the doctor in the middle of a work day and they have to figure out a way to make it up to you.
Mm.
Why? I know there's work and I know things have timelines and deadlines, but if you create a culture or an environment where somebody feels guilty for prioritizing their kid who broke their arm getting to a hospital from school, like what type of environment or example are you setting?
Mm-hmm.
And for everyone who's in a situation that doesn't have that type of power, right, you can't rail against it, but you can certainly ask with curiosity in advance how somebody would want you to respond to this. Would they make an honorable choice? Can you ask again with curiosity, listen, like I understand this is how your company works, this is how my job works, whatever type of job it might be. Not if, when I need to prioritize my kids, how do you stand on this? Because what we can do first is ask as an example, and then when we lead with it, we don't have to deal with the backlash behind it. So that, for the part of your question around workforce, like I think is the only way to approach it because we're up against this world of you have to work, you have to do the hours, somebody else can take care of it. And that has been one of the most damaging things to dads as a whole But when you set forth in a community, you have to have confidence and humility. Almost every time I fly, and this still happens to this day, when I fly with my two kids alone, I am judged by nearly every parent there who's a woman, and oftentimes some of the couples.
Mm.
My kids are going to be rambunctious. My kids are going to be loud. I'm not going to be able to handle it. And I'll tell you, I have changed diapers for other parents, especially the moms, on the middle of an airport floor or while a plane is flying. I have like pulled out of whatever suit I'm wearing for a fancy event when I'm traveling some wipes to give to somebody who needs it for their kids. I always have several different snacks on me that are kid friendly, nut or not, that I will hand to somebody else. One time on an escalator, this guy was holding his daughter's hand going down, and she twisted too hard and slipped, and she cut her forehead right here. And in the span of about 18 seconds, my daughter had taken out the band-aid from her backpack. I opened it. It was on his daughter's forehead. We got to the bottom of the escalator, and these two moms that were looking up were like, oh my God, like God has come back to this world again because a dad was able to do that. And I looked at them and I was like, it took me longer than I thought. Because in every situation, you're gonna face it because we live in a world that's had an imbalance of who are the caretakers. And it's not right for families to stay this way. And for the single dad, the divorced dads, we have no choice. We can get support, but we're the parent. And the same is true for single moms or any way that we parent. We're gonna have stigma in a society that thinks we have to conform to what a family unit has to be and what a dad should do versus a mom, except for the reason you became an alpha dad, the reason you built Company of Dads, all comes down to that story you told me years ago about how you were the second call when your kid needed something at school and they called your wife first. Because of course the mom has why that is a mentality in this day and age is a lot of why I love and appreciate what you've set out, not to correct, but to inspire people around. All of this is a choice. It's a
Mhm.
choice to judge somebody. It's a choice to react to it. It's a choice to be humble about it. But more than that, it's a choice to be apathetic to it or how you're being treated. I don't have that anymore in my life. Not just because I wrote a book about purposefulness and intention. I'm exhausted by people judging me when I am an absolutely confident and great parent, and I should be proud to say it. And I will still learn every day how to better parent my kids and stay calm and do what I need. And now more than anything, get the Nintendo Switch out of my 8-year-old's hands because Mario Kart World is
Oh
incredible.
my goodness. Yeah.
But the point is, it's a struggle. It's a choice I made, and how I react to it is a choice, and who I have around me is a choice. And we make excuses every single day. And this is a major point near the end of the book. We make choices every single day as to is around us, who influences us, and what didn't happen that's not fair that we deserve more of.
Mhm.
And my point is, it's a choice to surround yourself with people who will give as you give to them, as opposed to take or judge you. You can't pick all the parents in your kid's school, certainly, but you can choose how you interact with them and what standards you set, whether they like you or not.
David Homan, best-selling author of Orchestrating Connection. I love being able to say that about you, my friend, and the founder of Orchestrating Connecting. Amazing guy, amazing dad. Thank you so much for being on the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Company of Dads podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in week after week. Just want to use this moment here to thank the people who make it possible. Number one, of course, Helder Mira, who is our podcast editor. We also have Skip Cherryholmes, who many of you know from the Lead Dad Diaries. He's taken over our social media. Terry Brennan is helping us with our audience development, and Emily Servin is there each and every day helping with the web development. I can't do any of this without an amazing board of advisors. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who help, and I want to say thank you to everyone who listens. And hopefully you'll tune in again next week. Thanks so much.